Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's another episode of the Spartan Shadows podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and I'm joined with my co-host, Zach. Today, we're going to be kind of catching up with the basketball happenings from around the last weekend. I know you've seen our instant reactions with Emin and I after each game for MSU, but we wanted to kind of just fill in the gaps, get Zach's opinion because he wasn't unfortunately able to make those, and then kind of preview this weekend's Sweet 16 game against Ole Miss episode. We'll try not to keep you for too long, but Zach, I appreciate you hopping on with me. How are you doing? And Sweet 16, we're back.
I know, finally back to the second weekend. It feels like we haven't been here in a little while, but like this is the second time in only a couple of years. So it's one of those things that's like it doesn't feel like we've been here, like I was saying, that long ago. But yeah, just really excited to obviously be talking about this matchup. Excited to be talking about that New Mexico game. Definitely an interesting game to say the least. We saw some really good moments. We saw some moments that like, what are you doing? Like, let's just not do that. Let's just not get off to another slow start, which obviously we did. I know Izzo talked about that today a little bit in a press conference. I think we could have a conversation about lineup. Like, should we change the lineup? I think that could be something interesting that we could obviously bring up there. I think that's going to be probably not something that does happen. I would be kind of shocked if it does, but you have some really good performances. You've had some shaky performances, especially in New Mexico, but then through those shaky performances, you had moments where key players stepped up, and yeah, Jace Richardson really struggled, but we won the game, and I think it kind of shows more about what this team can do if Jace Richardson struggles and what they can do when he's really on. So I think if we saw more positive things out of this game, in my opinion, than negatives for this New Mexico team. And then obviously we'll talk about Ole Miss, which is a red hot team coming into the Sweet 16.
Yeah, that's going to be another tough test. Obviously, a Chris Beard coach team is never the easiest to go against. But you hit the head with New Mexico. It was the slow start, like I had kind of talked about, was not something you want to see. We were hoping we need the Spartans to get out to a fast pace, and that's something they're going to have to do against Ole Miss too. But it was really encouraging for me to see that they were able to kind of recover from the slow start, claw their way back like they have been. And then, like you said, in the game where we didn't have Jace as our main scoring threat for most of the game, for whatever reason, he was just having an off night. And that happens, but it's good to see that we're able to still put together enough offense to get a win. You know, would that be the case if we were going up against the Auburns or the Floridas or the Michigans or the Dukes of the world? Probably not. But in this tournament, it doesn't matter how good it looks. As long as you win, you move on. So credit to the guys. And Jaden Akins, to me especially, this was his moment as a Spartan where he put the team on his back. You know, his first few years here, he had other options with Tyson Walker and other players to kind of lean on offensively, but this is his team. He shouldered the load and said, I am not letting us go out. This is what we're going to do. And he led the charge, and it was good to see us squeak out a win with, not our best offensive night, I guess is the nice way to put that. But final score was 71-63. I don't think I mentioned that already, but the Spartans were down 2 at half and ended up pulling away later in the second half. And credit to them. It was a hard fought win. So I know most of my thoughts I kind of covered on the other video. So Zach, what did you really see with that? Was there anything else that really stood out to you, or what was kind of the keys with that?
Well, obviously this was the most Michigan State start to a game I've ever seen, and I feel like we say that almost every single game. You have a guy in Mustafa Mzil that has really struggled scoring recently, hitting shots. Next thing you know, he hits his first three. He has a majority of his points in the first half. Doesn't really do very much in the second, but you saw that Jackson Kohler struggled a little bit defensively on him. I do think the coaching staff did a really good job of adjusting to. I do think Jackson Kohler responded in the second half like a lot of this team. This was a first half that just wasn't good, but being Michigan State, kind of what the team is, obviously being a second half team, I think it really set them up for a real chance to obviously win the game, and they obviously do, but going into half down two, I think was absolutely massive, especially when this team was struggling so much, especially with Jace. Jace really has been kind of off for the most part. Like his first kind of couple of shots against Bryant was just, to put it lightly, well, not even put it lightly. Like they were awful. Like they weren't even on target. Like, And obviously he's a freshman. There's jitters, all that kind of stuff. Everyone has jitters. And then this game he was just off. He did make some of the biggest plays of this game towards the end of it. Had that huge and one at the end that basically put the game out of reach. Gives New Mexico absolutely zero chance after a Frankie Fiddler air ball. But speaking of Frankie was huge in this game. This is the kind of game that you brought in Frankie for. He was aggressive. He does still kind of bait a little bit on fouls, but I feel like this game was kind of a switch for him because I feel like earlier on the year he was kind of baiting for him, but then this time he's more aggressive and actually attacking, and he still gets the foul calls. Had a couple huge foul calls in this game. You also have Donovan Dent for New Mexico. He was kind of the main guy going into this game that I think Michigan State fans were a little bit concerned about. You didn't know exactly what he was going to play like. Obviously, he's the leading scorer for this New Mexico team. Very good guard. But you really see kind of the versatility of what this team can do. And we've seen it throughout the year. There's really been only one guard this year that has really kind of given Michigan State issues, and that was John Tonje. And John Tonje's a little bit of a bigger guard, so you don't really see those types of guards too much. And he was also hitting shots that were just absolutely insane, too. So you really have to just kind of tip your cap there. But Donovan Dent had literally the quietest 14 minutes I've ever seen from a player. Like, he did not seem like that he was that involved. He wasn't consistent either. Like, he wasn't very good from the field. He was only 7 for 18, so wasn't very great there. The only other player, and I think this is the player that going into it was probably my biggest concern, was Nelly Jr. Joseph. He was very, very efficient in this game. He was 7 for 9 from the field, 16 points. He was causing Michigan State issues all night. You do have to give credit to the big men, though. I do think Simone Chapawa actually had a pretty good game. I think this is one of his better games he's had recently. I think he had, obviously, the couple huge offensive rebounds. I thought defensively he played pretty well. Cooper kind of struggled at times. Kohler struggled at times. But overall, like, the center play wasn't awful. It was decent. I do think Michigan State needs a little bit more there, especially going forward against, like, Ole Miss, and then depending on the result between Michigan and Auburn, if Michigan State does win that game, to have a possibility of, again, facing Brad Golden, Danny Wolf, or Janai Broom, which he is one of the best centers, if not the best center in the country. But I think there was one moment in this game, obviously a bunch of huge moments, and you talked about Jaden Akins hitting the shot. Awesome to see from Jaden Akins, because it seems like every time he has that opportunity to hit that huge shot, he misses. And it's just one of those things where he hits that huge shot with about 7 minutes left to go to put Michigan State up 54-51, and they did not turn back since then. There's a few moments where New Mexico responded on a couple of runs, but I think those moments are where I'm going to kind of get to the biggest moment, in my opinion, that isn't being talked about, because it was a really close game. It was back and forth. You had Nelly Jr. Joseph have a putback dunk, and it was a 2-point game. I believe it was 51-49 when this happened. You see Jeremy Fears quickly push up the court and basically have Nelly Jr. Joseph run into him, get his fourth foul, gets out of the game with about 8:37 left. After that happened, I believe Michigan State went on a 14-7 run until Nelly Jr. Joseph came back in, cut the lead down to 5. He gets his fifth foul fouled out. Michigan State wins the rest of the game. It doesn't matter, because I think they outscored Michigan. I think they outscored them by a few points after that. You really saw what kind of player Nelly Jr. Joseph was, how impactful he was, and when he went out, New Mexico didn't have any guys down low that Michigan State would have to be concerned about, to be completely honest. Maybe a little bit harsh to the other big man. He's just not kind of that big man. So once he got out, I think that's when Michigan State kind of get a little bit more comfortable with the possibility that you're going to win this game. So I thought that was a huge moment. Then obviously the putback from Jace just kind of iced it at the end of the game. Going up 10 with like 50 seconds left, you knew that Michigan State was going to take home that win and go to Atlanta, Georgia.
Yep. Yeah, and it was really smart for, even when Junior Joseph got put back in the game with the 4 fouls, like you said, they started to make a little bit of a run, but I thought it was really smart of the coaching staff and Tom to kind of drop some plays that kind of attacked and went right at him when we were on offense. He knew just the way Nelly Jr. Joseph was playing the whole game and really the way the refs were calling the fouls. You knew if you attacked him on a couple of plays, one of them he was bound to get something. And I think it ended up being a transition run that I can't remember who was bringing it. It might have been Cohen was going to the net for a layup, and Nelly got beat, and you could see it from a mile away. As soon as he got beat, he was still going to go and try and make the block, and that's just easy pickings for a ref. And I think right then we all knew, okay, that's going to be number 5, and that was all she wrote for him, and that kind of just took the life out of the comeback for New Mexico. So credit to the staff, credit to the players. They rallied, and now they had this week to prepare and get a whole week in for practice for Chris Beard in New Mexico, which we all know Chris Beard. I'll transition.
Oh, you mean Ole Miss?
Sorry. Chris Beard and Ole Miss, which we all know Chris Beard from his Texas Tech days. Unfortunately, he got the better of Coach Izzo the last time they met, which was the 2019 Final Four. Don't want to dwell on that too much because this is going to be a positive podcast, and we don't want to have to force a couple of cocktails to come out a little early. So the Ole Miss team, they are playing some really good basketball of late. I just want to kind of give some Ken Pom kind of statistics. I touched a little bit on this the other day, just as a quick preview. They are 21st in Ken Pom. MSU is still ranked 7th. So, I mean, obviously we have the advantage there, but they are still a good team by every stretch of the imagination. MSU has the advantage in the adjusted defense. They're about even on adjusted offense. Where we're really going to have the advantage, though, is on the boards. And I think that's going to be something that we really need to take advantage of and win if we are going to have success. Because if you look at the last handful of teams that Ole Miss has lost to, they've gotten beaten pretty handily on the rebound on the glass, and that leads to second chance points, putbacks. It allows us, if we get the defensive rebounds, to get out in transition and run a little bit. So while they're playing good basketball, I think a lot of what we like to do goes against some of their weaknesses. So hopefully those matchups can be exploited and give the Spartans a little bit of an edge down the road there. So I haven't seen the line yet. That's one thing I was going to look up.
I believe it's 2.5.
2.5? Okay. I think it started at right around there, 3.5. So MSU is favored but not by much, and so it should be a good matchup. And like you said, the winner has a chance, or if you win, you have a chance to play Auburn, who going into most of the season I think was the hands down favorite to win the whole thing. But the last few weeks they have not been playing their best basketball. And then we also could have a chance to play Michigan again. Hard to beat a team 3 times in a season, but at the same time, we have fared well against Michigan, and we know them well. So I don't think that would have too many surprises in their game. I really don't know if I want 2 days of the toxicity levels of what Michigan State in a Final Four would mean for social media or to go to the Final Four. Good. So I think I don't know, but it sets up for a very interesting weekend down south in Atlanta. So, Zach, what are you thinking when you look at this Ole Miss team, and what's something maybe you look to see happen for MSU to get the win?
Yeah, so like you said, they're led by Chris Beard. You could maybe say it's a little bit of a revenge game from the game against Texas Tech in the Final Four. I honestly think, I think to this day, Michigan State probably should have won that game, and we could be talking about maybe a possibility of a third national championship for Tom Izzo, but obviously we won't be talking about that because I think Michigan State beats that Virginia team pretty handily, in my opinion. But that's here nor there. But yeah, this Ole Miss team, they're going to be a different team than we faced in this tournament, which I think is a good and bad thing because the first 2 teams that we faced has had size, especially at the big man position. You see Bryant didn't, but Bryant had size at the guards. You also had New Mexico size at the big man. With Ole Miss, it's a little bit different. They're a little bit more guard heavy. The guards are not as big as what we've seen, so I do think that's going to help defensively kind of guard them. But this is an Ole Miss team, like we talked about, that is really, really shooting the ball well, especially from 3. Against Iowa State, they shot 57.9% from three, went 11 for 19. Seems like they barely missed at all in that game. And you have an Iowa State team that is really, really good defensively, that doesn't give up many points. They absolutely got blown out against this Ole Miss team. They also shot 40% from three on 20 attempts in North Carolina. Now, I know a couple of months ago, maybe even less than that, there's chatter about, is this Michigan State three-point defense legit, or are they just lucky? Like, are they just running into teams that are just not shooting well that day? Because from the percentages you look at, Michigan State, when teams go against Michigan State, they shoot, I think I saw like 6 or 7% lower than they typically do. Now, I think this Ole Miss team is really going to put that to a test because they have a point guard in Sean Padula that is a leading scorer. He's been great shooting the ball. You also have Malik Dia, and I think he's going to be kind of the one that I'm really going to keep an eye on. He's their center. He's 6'9". He's not your typical center, though. Like, he's legitimately the tallest guy they have, but he's going to be a possible issue for this Michigan State team because you have Carson Cooper, you have Simone Zapala, you have Jackson Kohler. This is a big man that can dribble. This is a big man that can shoot from three. This is someone that is Michigan State's going to have to keep an eye on. Obviously, Sean Padula is going to be someone that's going to be as well. You have the guards to defend this team. You have to also try to run Ole Miss off the three-point line. I think that's going to be the key thing is if you can run Ole Miss off the three-point line, if you can do a good job contesting this team, I think it's going to be a real possibility you win this game. Now, Michigan State has found ways to win two different types of ways. They found games that they've won when it's been a very high-scoring game. They've also found ways to win when it's been a very low-scoring game. This Ole Miss team is good defensively. They force turnovers. Now, you did mention that they're poor rebounding. They're poor offensive rebound and poor defensive rebound. If you can force Ole Miss to miss their shots, I think you'll be pretty good on the boards. Now, they have out-rebounded North Carolina. They have out-rebounded Iowa State. That's probably because they've been making a lot of their threes. Obviously, is a big reason why. I think if Michigan State can stay active on the offensive rebounding, if they can get second, third opportunities to score and do a very good job defensively stopping the three, I think this is going to be a game that Michigan State should win. It's just really going to kind of depend on what's MSU going to do against Malik Dia. Is it going to be kind of that plan of like shutting off the water for everyone else and letting Malik Dia get his? We've seen Michigan State do that in the past against Michigan. The only issue with that is if you don't shut off the water, it's going to be a long night. If Michigan State does get off to a fast start, it's going to be a long night. It's a Sweet 16. Everyone's good. You can't get behind too much. If you go into half down, depending on how much, you're fine, but you can't always expect to come back in the second half either against some of these top teams. Real possibility that Michigan State does win this game. I think it really depends on the defensive side of the ball. Will Michigan State be able to get offensive rebounds, which they have been able to do against Bryant? Got 21 against Bryant, then I believe got like 10 plus against New Mexico as well. So I think MSU should be able to feast there. Just can they stop Ole Miss from shooting 40% from three? If they can get it to like 30%, I would feel actually pretty comfortable because a lot of the games they've lost, it's been like about 30 to 33%. Now, they've obviously won some games shooting that way, but if they can keep around 30%, maybe a little bit lower, I think it's going to be a real possibility MSU can win this game.
Yep, absolutely. And the guard play for us is going to be key. The good thing that MSU has with the guards that we do run out, Jaden Akins, Trey Holloman, Jeremy Fears to an extent, but Jaden and Trey especially are elite defenders, and they can defend the perimeter. And I mean, there's a reason now that MSU is number one in adjusted defense against the three in the country, according to Ken Pom. So I think that's going to be something that has to be clamped down. Like you said, if you allow them to kind of start making their threes and that sort of thing, it's going to be a problem because while Ole Miss isn't the best at defending the three, we're also not the best at making the three either. So I think we're going to be able to attack in transition and attack down low and be able to, get a fair amount of, decent looks from inside the 3-point line. But if you start getting behind and having to try to claw back, if you're not able to, consistently make 3-point shots and get 3-point looks, it's harder to do. And that's kind of been the catch-22 of MSU all year. If they get down too much, will they be able to make the threes that need to be made to claw out? So far they have. I just don't know if that's not, I mean, I do know it's not a recipe for success at this late in the tournament. So look for Jaden and Trey and Jeremy. Of course, Jace a little bit too. I don't want to make it sound like Jace isn't a good defender, because he is as well. Those four are going to have their hands full, and they're going to really need to show up on the defensive end to help kind of limit. New Mexico likes to run, or sorry, I keep saying New Mexico. Ole Miss likes to run too. They're not necessarily maybe as trigger happy to do that as MSU is, but they do like to move, and they actually are ranked as like the faster, I guess, offense, if you want to explain it that way, with adjusted tempo. They're a little bit ahead of MSU in that regard. So another big thing, and my last big point, free throws. MSU all year shot their free throws really well. Of late, it's been not as great. MSU ranks 15th in the country, according to Ken Pom, in fouls drawn per game. Ole Miss is 95th. And so I think that's an area where you're going to have an advantage, because they also are 124th in the country in free throw percentage, whereas we are 25th. So that's an area, if you can attack the rim, players like Frankie Fiddler remain aggressive. Obviously, Cohen's going to be aggressive. I don't think Cohen cannot be aggressive. But Jeremy Fears doing what he does in drawing fouls, that's going to be something that you can really exploit, but you have to make the shots. You can't shoot 60% from free throw as a team and expect to have that kind of tilt the game in your favor. You know, you need to be in the high 70s, low 80s as a team, and then that's when you can start getting those points back. And if you're down, make a comeback or help you pad the lead and keep it out of reach. So make the free throws. I know Tom's probably got him shooting free throws every day this week, because I'm sure he was not happy with the last game's free throw performance. But those are kind of my keys in what I think. And Zach, I agree with what you were saying too. If we can do all that, it should be a hopefully successful and celebratory night on Friday. But there's a lot to accomplish. That's a lot of keys to try to focus in on. Hopefully the coaching staff and the players can lock in and get it done. So yeah, I wasn't saying anything else you got on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's kind of crazy how far MSU has or not even has fallen from free throw percentage. Like, I remember, like, we were like top 5, maybe top 10 in the country, and now we're like 25th.
Yeah.
So where did that go? That's my biggest question. Seems like the percent of shooting three is going up a little bit, and the percent of shooting free throws has plummeted.
Yeah.
So usually it kind of has the same path typically. So if you're pretty good at shooting free throws, you'll be a pretty good 3-point shooting team. That hasn't necessarily been the case, and for MSU, it's just a weird team, man. It's just a weird team. It's like the complete opposite of each other. So if we could find a happy medium, being a good free throw shooting team and being a decent 3-point shooting team, I'll be pretty happy.
And I think we're getting close, and that's part of why you've seen the runs that we've been on of late. The 3-point percentage is getting a little back to where I think we should have been all year. For whatever reason, we've had such issues. Jaden Akins is a better 3-point shooter than what he's shown all year. There's no getting around that. I don't know if it's a mental thing that he's fought all year with, like, just not seeing the ball drop a few times, or if there was something mechanically that was off that he's starting to work out. I don't really know. I haven't really seen anything, but that's starting to level out a little bit. So that's good. But yeah, you got to keep it locked in at the free throw line. And, you know, this team should be able to shoot 70, 80% from the free throw line as a collective each night. I don't know why they haven't been late. So hopefully that levels out again and kind of tilts back to the norm. So last basketball piece of news I wanted to hit on really quickly before we transition into hockey. The women's team, they did win their first round tournament game over Harvard, but unfortunately ran into one of the better basketball teams in the country for women's basketball in the second round in NC State. That was almost a true road game too, because that regional was in Durham, I believe, or Raleigh, somewhere in North Carolina, right down the road. So they unfortunately ran into the buzzsaw that was NC State and were eliminated in the round of 32. Kudos to Coach Freilich and the Spartan ladies on a great season, starting to put together some consistency and, you know, winning some games. I think they finished, I believe it was 22-10, I believe, right around there. Let me check that.
Something around there.
22-10. So, you know, improving, getting back to where this program has been. You know, it doesn't happen overnight a lot of times, especially in women's college basketball. Unfortunately, there's not as much parity as there is in the men's game. So hopefully it's another building block, and potentially this year, maybe, or this time next year, we can see a Sweet 16 berth. I just wanted to shout out them on a good season. Unfortunately, that came to an end, but kudos to them. It is a tough ask, and that's a good NC State team. A lot of people have them picked to make a deep run. So, but unfortunately, that's just how it goes sometimes. But shout out to the Spartan ladies, and congrats on a good season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely in the right step forward. Like you're saying, not a lot of parity in women's basketball. I would say there's a lot more disparity between the top teams and the teams in the middle. Not saying Michigan State is there. I do think they're obviously taking a step forward. You saw MSU against USC. You saw MSU against UCLA. They have had opportunities to beat really good teams. The Big Ten is a really good conference for both men's and women's. They were pretty good this year, and they just went on, I believe, like almost like an 8-minute run where they didn't score a single point. And when that happens, you're going to end up being down like 37 to 39 to 9 at that point, and there's no team in the country that's going to come back from that against any team. Unless, that's kind of the lead you give them at the start of it, and then they're like a Division II team and you're like a Division I team, you might eventually find your way back to it. But against a team like NC State, no, not really. But yeah, really good year for them. Obviously made the right step. I think they're going to continue to make a step with Freilich as the head coach. I think she's done great things. She has been very successful at her jobs in the past. So just continue to give her time. They play a fun offense. I think they're going to continue to get better players in. They're going to continue to use the transfer portal, and they're just going to continue to get better. Might take, and again, like we're saying, might take a little bit more time to kind of build the program up, but they're headed in the right direction, which a couple of years ago, I love Susie Merchant, but I don't think you could say the women's team was headed in the right direction a few years ago, but now under Robin Freilich, I think you can say that.
Yeah, we've been spoiled a little bit with how quickly hockey's turned around, and Adam Nightingale, because people forget it does take some time to start from scratch and build a program up. And Coach Robin, I think she's the person to do that. And it's kind of the same thing I tend to tell people about Coach Smith too. I think Coach Jonathan Smith, Coach Robin Freilich, they're both really good coaches, and I think they're people that we need here. It takes some time to build the program up. So